So, have you ever wondered why some things just seem to last forever, while others completely fall apart the second things get even a little bit complicated? Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a really fascinating journey through a philosophical essay written by Zhu Fen, and it's called The Purer, the More Stable. Now, we're going to start things off with some truly bizarre scientific anomalies, but stick with me, because by the end of our time together, we'll see exactly how the author uses these quirks of nature to construct a grand theory of, well, absolutely everything. We're talking about the way businesses operate, the rise and fall of entire nations, and even the fundamental nature of spiritual salvation. It's a seriously compelling piece of writing, and honestly, it challenges a lot of the assumptions we make every single day. Okay, let's dive right into this. The essay actually begins by grounding us in the physical world, specifically with a really strange natural phenomenon reported back on January 22nd, 2019. Up in the freezing attic of an Alaskan resident named Roderick Cooper, something wild was happening. Scientists call it supercooling. It happens when a liquid is so perfectly pure, literally stripped of any microscopic impurities, that its freezing process just slows down dramatically. Because of this absolute purity, the water simply refuses to form ice crystals. It just stays liquid. And what makes this Alaskan report so absolutely mind-boggling is the temperature where this happened. Minus 22 degrees Celsius. Just think about that for a second. At that extreme, bone-chilling temperature, those two bottles of remarkably pure water stayed in a completely fluid state. The author uses this striking visual to plant the very first seed of their argument, that an extreme state of purity creates this powerful, almost magical resistance to external environmental changes. Moving on to Section 1, The Enigma of Feral Children. Here, the essay asks us to observe what happens when wild animals encounter human babies. Across history, it seems that whenever dangerous predators interact with human infants, they become surprisingly docile, affectionate, and fiercely protective. Now, the author traces this all the way back to the foundation myth of Rome in 753 BC, where the usurper Amulius threw his niece Silvia's twins into the Tiber River. But instead of perishing, their cries attracted a mother wolf who lovingly licked them dry and nursed them. But hey, the essay points out this isn't just some ancient myth. Jumping way forward to 1920 in Nepal, India, two little girls were discovered walking on all fours, trailing right behind three wolves who had essentially raised them. And get this, by the 1950s, science had officially documented 30 distinct cases of human children being raised by wild beasts. Looking at the breakdown of those 30 documented cases, the stats are pretty staggering. We've got 14 children raised by wolves, 5 by bears, 1 by a literal leopard, and 10 by monkeys and sheep. The author uses this data to pose a really profound question. Why on earth do dangerous predators, animals we assume would instinctively hunt, cherish and protect human infants rather than, making a meal out of them? Which brings us right to Section 2, Defining the Universal Law. Looking at all these natural anomalies, the author extracts a core philosophical thesis. And here it is. The purer a thing is, the less susceptible it is to external factors. So whether it's water completely resisting freezing temperatures or a baby's pure innocence pacifying a wild leopard, purity inherently equals stability. Purity creates a literal shield against whatever the environment throws at it. And we can actually see this law reflected directly in chemistry. The author draws a super interesting parallel to the chemical stability of the rare noble gases, helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, and radon. Because these elements are entirely pure and complete within themselves, they're highly stable. They simply do not react to the external factors buzzing around them. All right, Section 3, Spirituality and Inner Purity. The author takes this natural, microscopic law and boldly scales it up to spiritual salvation, linking the teachings of two massive historical figures. Jesus Christ stated that to enter the kingdom of God, one must become a child. And similarly, Lao Tzu taught that to unite with the Tao, one must return to the state of infancy. The essay basically argues that a true celestial or Buddha nature demands the absolute simplicity of a child. Because infants are purely their true unvarnished nature, they are loved by their environment, even by wolves. Which leads straight into this really striking claim. The author asserts that self-cultivation and, entering heaven have absolutely nothing to do with the things society usually values. According to the essay, your learning and knowledge, your religious affiliation, the number of good deeds you've tallied up, or rituals like kowtowing and burning incense, none of it matters. The only thing that dictates salvation is keeping one's life perfectly, flawlessly pure. Let's pivot a bit here to Section 4, Impurity in Society. The author posits that this universal law governs human business just as much as Mother Nature. Take a food company, for example. It's founded with a pure, singular focus, right? And because of that, it thrives. But eventually, it decides to branch out, maybe mixing in politics, some real estate, or the stock market. Because it deviated from its pure original purpose, it becomes complex. And according to the author, once it gets complex, it inevitably collapses. The author then scales this whole concept up into a highly charged geopolitical argument regarding governance. Now, impartially speaking, the essay states that pure socialism is highly stable and inherently superior to capitalism. However, the author argues that regimes in places like Romania, Yugoslavia, the USSR, Venezuela, Vietnam, and China collapsed or are faltering specifically because they practiced impure socialism. According to the text, the exact moment you mix in impurities, like market forces, party and family interests of corruption, the system completely violates the law of purity and is doomed to fail. To summarize this whole idea of societal decay, the essay uses this incredibly vivid metaphor. Flies always find the cracked eggs. An egg without a single crack remains pure, completely sealed off, and totally unbothered by the outside world. But the second an egg cracks, the second an impurity is introduced into a system, it invites decay. Reflecting on their own personal experience founding an organization called Life Chen Yuan, the author claims to have witnessed this exact law playing out in real time. They observed that people with really complex thoughts were easily disturbed and ended up leaving, while the pure, simple thinkers remained stable and grounded. Think about your own social groups or workplaces for a second. Have you ever noticed a dynamic kind of like this at play? And this brings us to our final part, Section 5, the paradox of complexity. So here is the million-dollar question, the most provocative turn of the whole essay. Is being highly knowledgeable, deeply experienced, and incredibly smart actually a fundamental flaw? Are our modern ideas of intelligence completely backwards according to this universal law? The essay draws a really stark contrast here. On one hand, the pure mind is simple, stable, and deeply, deeply connected to truth. But the complex mind, the highly capable, flexible overthinker, is fundamentally unreliable. Because complex people violate the law of stability, the author argues they're actually the ones most likely to vow their undying loyalty today and then totally abandon you tomorrow. Which brings us right to the author's ultimate paradoxical conclusion. The most complex thinkers are the most silly and stupid people in the world. Now, no way around it. It's a jarring statement that flips absolutely everything we value about intellect completely upside down. It really leaves us with a fascinating puzzle to ponder. As we navigate our own lives, our careers, our personal relationships, is adding complexity always a mistake? Is true lasting wisdom really just a matter of unyielding simplicity? Well, it's definitely something to chew on as you go about your day. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the complex world around you.